And good day, everyone. Richard Cowperthwait for Northwest Access TV. Thank you for joining us for one of our periodic programs, and happy to have on board today. I should note we're taping this show, where are we? Wednesday, March 22nd, second full day of spring. Happy to have on board Franklin County Sheriff John Grismore. Sheriff, good to see you.
Good morning, Richard. Nice to see you as well.
We talked, of course, before the election, and boy, you've been again taping the show on March 22nd. So what? Almost two months in office. Not a long time, but feel
Not
like
a
you're
long
off to a decent start.
Yeah, we are off to a great start. You know, we have a great team, and I'm really satisfied with the progress that we've made. And again, as you noted, just a couple of months.
Couple months. So sworn in on February 1st.
That's correct. Yep.
So staffing, did you retain most of the staff that your predecessor Roger Langevin had, or many changes staff-wise?
No, we did. We retained the bulk of the core. We've had folks leave. I mean, there's some natural attrition that goes on. I think when there's ever a change in leadership, things change. But I'm really happy with the folks that stayed. You know, I think that they're the right members to have on the team, and are going to be integral in the development of the office going forward. So I was very pleased about that.
You certainly took command under a pretty dark cloud. I mean, not too much. I mean, just a whole lot of controversy going back to the the August 7th incident, a couple days before the primary. And again, a simple assault charge resulting from that with your interaction with the detainee. That's still a pending misdemeanor charge at this point.
That's correct. Right.
Interesting. Which and again, I know you told me before you were surprised they brought a charge. You feel very strongly there's no way the state will get a conviction out of that charge?
We feel very strongly that's true, correct, that they will not get a conviction out of this.
Well, I mean, worst case scenario for you, if there is a conviction, does that doesn't change your status as being sheriff?
No, it doesn't.
Basically irrelevant to your position, even if there were a conviction?
Correct.
Interesting.
Yep.
And again, criminal cases seem to take forever. This could take months to finally resolve. I know you have a motion to dismiss at this point.
Right, Richard. Yeah, they can take years to resolve.
Years.
Usually we think of those as being about a 2-year cycle. If it goes to jury trial, then that could be a couple of years.
And of course, this was a case that the Franklin County State's Attorney's Office kicked it over to Grand Isle County to Doug DeSabato, the island's prosecutor who brought the charge.
That's correct.
And was there some talk about trying to move the trial, if it comes to that, out of Franklin County? Did DeSabato want that in Grand Isle County, or did I dream that? Is that maybe that issue hasn't even come up?
Yeah, I believe it was the judge that suggested that it move out of Franklin County, and only because I'm responsible for the security there, and the folks that staff that are mine. So
that might make sense if it comes to that.
It does, and I was very appreciative of that suggestion. Certainly it's not fair for my deputies to be caught in between, me appearing as somebody that's been accused. So I was thankful for that. I thought that that was a good decision to make. And
you're obviously hoping it doesn't get that far.
I'm mixed about that, Richard.
Oh, really?
I think just in terms of what I know about the facts, I'm confident that it won't get that far. However, if it does go to trial, one of the things that I've been thinking about is that it's really going to be the only way to expose all the facts and circumstances, which I think.
So it sounds like you'd be more than happy to testify if it came to trial.
I would be more than happy. Yeah, and certainly that would involve calling a number of people to the stand and hearing testimony, factual testimony.
Interesting.
That I know has been omitted from the public awareness. Which I think it's natural for cases. People don't know the ins and outs, the specifics of cases until they do go to trial, and those circumstances can be brought forward in a more public fashion. But because the case with me has been so widely publicized, and as I've stated multiple times before, that has been taken largely out of context. It's been, part of the information, not all of the information. So. I would look forward to the opportunity to really be transparent about all of the elements, all of the facts, all of the circumstances.
Interesting. So kind of mixed emotions about that.
Yeah.
We'll see. But again, this could literally be months or even longer down the road.
Right. Yes, it could.
Well, it just seems like too bad things take so long to resolve.
They do. Yeah, and it's again, that's just the natural process. And if you look at any court cases, particularly ones that do make it to trial, they do just take a long time to get through.
Right. Another issue kind of hanging over to you to some extent, I guess, Doug Hoffer, the state auditor, and I guess as was routine with the change of sheriffs, with Roger Longfin leaving, you being elected to succeed him, came up with something in his auditing, and I forget if you used the word possible improprieties with bookkeeping or whatever he said, but I guess he kicked it to state police. But again, your reaction to that, and you haven't been interviewed, you really have no kind of knowledge about this?
That's correct. I don't. And I think what he used, or the term that was used, was questionable.
I'm sure,
which,
yeah.
I mean, anything that rises question or, reason for inquiry could be deemed a questionable, right? So, and that's standard in all audits, right? I mean, that's one of the things, and we participated in a number of audits in the time that I was in charge of the finances before.
And you were under Sheriff Longfin during your tenure while you were still there. You were in charge of finances.
That's correct.
But you said the sheriff signed off on everything that you did?
Yeah, absolutely, Richard. You're right. And let's be very clear about that. Every transaction that took place at the sheriff's office, whether it was payroll review, checks going out, money coming in, monthly reconciliations, every single thing was reviewed by Sheriff Longfin in writing.
Yeah.
So.
And the sheriff would have to, that sounds like a typical thing, the sheriff would have to be the person to sign off on that, or not?
Correct. That's the standard practice.
Okay.
Yep, exactly right. So, so I'm not sure what the foundation is. I have not been presented with any of the findings. I've
really
not talked to anybody about, the specifics of the case, such that there could be one. So I'm looking forward to understanding what those are, and having, again, like with everything else, having an opportunity to present facts and to, in circumstances to those, possible questions. So, but again, it's not uncommon for things to be discovered during audits. And as I've stated before, if there are findings from an audit that are opportunities for us to improve process or come up with a better documentation, whatever that is, we're committed to understanding what those are and making those improvements. It's another thing that people don't really realize, Richard, is that sheriff's departments are businesses. In
fact, that'd be worth talking about. It's
first and
I think
foremost,
we've talked about it before. It's not like you're a municipal police department where voters on town meeting day approve the municipality's budget, and you're part of that budget. Oh, that your life would be that simple in a way. It's it's a way more complicated financial situation,
and we don't have the resources that like a municipality would have.
Right.
Our resources are incredibly limited, but it's a multi-million-dollar business, and there's a lot that happens. Lots of transactions. Hundreds of transactions a month, thousands and thousands of transactions a year. So certainly there's going to be times where we can be better educated on how to manage those monies. And as I've talked about before, we brought in an outside consulting, CPA firm to help us in the past. So that's something that I had brought in to help us better understand the best practices.
Did you do that when you were under Sheriff Longfin?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. So, as an opportunity for us to better understand, because again, it's very complex. There's a lot of layers to it. So that's my assumption. My assumption is that they found some things that, we can use as continuous improvements. But if you look at it, and they actually publish audit results for all the sheriff's departments throughout the state, and you can go through and read, and some of the findings that historically they have found for us, they have found for other sheriff's departments. So those, again, are just opportunities that we can take to just improve the process and be much more transparent about how we manage monies, how we categorize what monies are received and what monies are spent, those kinds of things.
While you were doing your managing the money, were there any issues that came up that were of concern to you that you weren't quite sure about how to handle or anything?
There were, absolutely. As we look at how to categorize loans, as an example. I didn't know at the time that we were supposed to break out interest as just one kind of a smaller example. But working with the outside CPA firm, we understood that had to be categorized differently, that we had to separate, like on a car loan. You know what I mean? I think for our purposes, we would track that in our tax because, that could be an incentive, or there could be some sort of return on categorizing interest in a certain way, like with your mortgage, right? So we didn't understand that. I didn't understand that that was a requirement, but we brought in a firm that helped us understand one of those, one of those details so that we can break it out. Now, it's not fraudulent, it's not mismanagement, it's just a better way of tracking what those are. We're a nonprofit, so, tax-wise, it doesn't really matter for us, so, but it's just what they had as a suggestion on a best practice, so we incorporated that, so. Things like that, but nothing that was major, nothing that was ever of a concern or, something, so
you
everything was pretty easy.
you don't have a big concern about this audit situation, whatever it is.
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah.
Have you still got that outside firm? Are they still working with the department at this point?
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting.
That's
So have you got who's the key money manager you were under Roger when you were there? Have you got someone who's a key money manager in the sheriff's department now?
We do.
Yeah.
And this person was hired before I was elected, and a great addition to the team. One of the really interesting things is this person was a deputy for a number of years previously, and then had left that profession and had gotten her degree in accounting and business management and those kinds of things, and is working on her master's degree right now. So, just a tremendous fit. A great personality in the office, very conscientious about how we manage money and things like that. She was only hired in November, so she's still learning a lot of the different nuances. But yeah, that's been a tremendous addition to the team.
May get back to the kind of the financing of the sheriff's department, but certainly a big issue that got a lot of attention in the last month or so was the I think accurately what was called the historic agreement between St. Albans City and St. Albans Town.
Yeah.
And God knows how many hundreds of thousands of dollars have been wasted on the thorny wastewater issue. Yeah. So, of course, that agreement, getting the city and town finally in agreement, kind of equalize rates on wastewater. And the second part of that, of course, concerned police coverage with St. Albans City PD will be kind of retaking control, so to speak, coverage of the town starting July 1st, 2024.
That's correct.
So my question, I guess I'm thinking, boy, not good news for Sheriff Grismore, but then thinking, boy, does that almost make your life easier with anyway, you tell me, was that bad news for you?
It's good and bad. One thing I've learned over the last several months is that there's it's just how you look at it. Do you look at this as an opportunity or not? And we look at this as an opportunity. Certainly we weren't pleased to know that, but it makes sense. And I've had a number of conversations with Kerry Johnson, the town manager. Yeah. And I don't know all of the intricacies of the deal other than what's been made public.
I guess one basic thing is there's funding at 50-50, I guess. The town and city will split the cost. Sounds like it's going to be a different coverage situation than than when the city PD had it before. But in any case.
I'm not sure what their staffing model looks like. I hope it's as a town resident now. I hope it's.
You're a St. Albans town resident now.
Yeah. So and I grew up in St. Albans town, so I certainly have a vested interest in the success of the town and the safety of the town. But I'm hoping that they are going to be able to provide the same number of people that we did. We provided 18,352 hours of coverage a year. Wow. So I'll say that again, 18,000. Wow. So I'm hoping that they'll be able to do the same thing. But again, I'm not sure what their staffing model looks like. But the bits and pieces, Richard, that I am aware of, I think it makes sense. It makes sense for the town and it makes sense for the city to come to a long-term agreement. One of the challenges that we have in contractual law enforcement is it's very tumultuous, particularly when you get towards the end of the contract time. Folks are wondering, is the contract going to get extended? It's, the question of job security becomes an anxiety point for a lot of folks. And I've lived in that world, in a previous life, I was a contract employee, and I can certainly appreciate the anxiety that goes along with, when you come to the end of the contract or being aware of contract negotiations. That's something that doesn't really exist anywhere else in law enforcement. It's just something that's kind of unique to this contractual process that sheriffs are, and obviously some municipalities are involved with. So it makes sense to me, kind of taking this from an outside look, it makes sense to me that they would entertain a much more long-term contractual agreement.
Did you hear any rumblings before that was publicly announced?
I didn't.
You didn't.
No,
so that
I didn't.
Kind of came out of the blue to me, pretty much.
Right.
But.
Yeah. You know what? And I think and they were very very clear about this process starting, as far back as June. And you would think that a contractual arrangement of this magnitude would require a tremendous amount of time and debate and collaboration to come to consensus and agreement on. So it makes sense to me. I mean, it really does. And
have you met with the town select board since you've been sheriff?
I've met with a few of them. Yeah, I've kind of made the rounds to all of the towns that we support. But but St. Albans City PD has got great leadership. I've worked with a lot of them for a lot of years. Yeah. They have capable officers that are committed and dedicated. So I'm not concerned that that they're going to be getting, that the town is getting a subpar team. Certainly we would like to have maintained our professional relationship with the town, but I understand it. I get it. It does make sense to me. I think it makes tremendous financial sense. And you need to look at the bigger picture. If this were specifically about the police contract, maybe my feelings would be a little bit different, but it was made very clear to me, and I think it was made very clear to the public that this wasn't a performance decision.
No, I've heard, again, I've been interviewing, of course, city and town folks forever, it seems like, but I've certainly have heard no complaints about coverage by the sheriff's department.
Right. So I'm happy to know that the policing contract was part of a bigger financial transaction. And I know about, at least a little bit about the challenges that the town and the city have had about wastewater and water. Potable water. So it makes sense to me, and I was sharing with Carrie that, had they brought me in as an outside consultant, I probably would have supported that decision.
Interesting. I guess City PD will be looking to hire, maybe they've already started four additional officers when they do when they get the town back a little over a year down the road. I guess that begs the question, will you reduce staff because when you lose a town, will that mean you'll need less deputies, I assume, or will you lose staff because of that, or not necessarily?
No, our plan is to not lose and in fact continue to grow. So not having the St. Albans town contract will give us the opportunity
to maybe pick up some other towns.
Exactly. Yep. To pick up some towns that we have wanted to participate in providing police services for, but we just never had the staffing. But we have entertained a number of different requests from various different towns, not necessarily for the same kind of coverage that St. Albans town gets, but bits and pieces. So I'm very confident, my leadership team and I are very confident that we'll be able to continue to expand actually and grow into other parts of the community.
That's right. What towns have you got now, Sheriff?
So currently right now we have contracts with Richford, with Enosburg, and Fairfax.
Just three towns.
Just those three today, in addition to St. Albans town.
And St. Albans towns.
Yep. And the timing's going to be good. We have a year to align a lot of these resources and consider what communities we are able to partnership with, and so I'm really confident about that, and it also opens up the door for us to participate in more of our collaborative efforts with organizations like the U.S. Border Patrol, with Homeland Security investigations, with the Vermont Drug Task Force, with Governor's Highway Safety. So things that we have been really valuable partnerships we've not been able to faithfully support as much as we would like to. So this will be an opportunity for us to really kind of dabble in those spaces again, and I think that's going to be a win for everybody as well.
Speaking of the Border Patrol, and you make me think of something that this got some attention years ago, I guess, with then Sheriff Norris, now State Senator Bob Norris. Yep. But some program that was hooked into the Border Patrol or border issues. I think you know what I'm talking. Yeah. But what's that program? Is that still with us?
It's titled Stone Garden.
Thank you, Stone Garden.
Stone Garden, yep. So what that is that's a joint venture between Customs Border Protection and various different law enforcement agencies. So our sheriff's office has participated in that historically.
Are you doing that still?
Bits and pieces. Again, we don't have the resources to be able to do that to the degree that we want to. It's certainly part of the plan to start supporting that program, with more personnel, with more hours, if you will. So. But a lot of agencies in Vermont do support that initiative, and really what that is it's to help with interdiction efforts, with the Border Patrol and helping to extend their mission and support their mission. So their resources are incredibly limited with some of the challenges, as I understand it, that they've had on the southern border.
Right.
Resources have had to be shifted from the northern border to the southern border.
Although it sounds like I'm hearing, it sounds like the northern border is becoming a bit more of an issue. Of course, you're always hearing about, what is it, Roxham Road over in Champlain?
Yeah.
But it sounds like there's been a lot more activity, more folks coming from Canada trying to get into the U.S. these days?
Correct. Yep, absolutely. And certainly that makes sense. As you apply resources to one border, it opens and exposes another border. So, and again, I know very little about the challenges that the Border Patrol face specifically on a day-to-day basis. However, this project is really designed to provide local law enforcement, state law enforcement, sheriffs, those kinds of things, the opportunity to participate in some of these interdiction efforts.
Richford, of course, being a border town, obviously you get some help. It sounds like there's pretty good cooperation when need be hopefully with area law enforcement agencies. The Border Patrol jump in once in a while and help you guys.
The Border Patrol is really one of our primary backup agencies up there. They're
and vice versa, will you back them?
Absolutely we will, whenever we can. Our missions are a little bit different. But they've always been a fantastic resource for us, and we've been very appreciative of their coming to our calls, their participating in supporting us when we need it. So, as an example, there was that swatting that was taking place where people were calling the schools and faking active shooters.
What, about 21 schools or something? That was pretty crazy.
That, right, yeah, but Border Patrol immediately responded to schools in our area to support that, just in case. I mean, we certainly didn't know as that was developing. We didn't know, was this a diversionary tactic where an actual situation could take place. So, but just as one of the many, many examples, they immediately deployed to the schools in those kind of border areas to provide additional resources and support. And when we have new folks that come in that join the Border Patrol up in this area, we'll bring them through our schools as an example, again, of just that partnership and the realization that we could rely on them for some, mass casualty issues, some an active shooter issue, whatever that might be. And so we've done that. Our SRO up in Richford just recently brought a couple of new Border Patrol agents through the school up there just to get them familiar with kind of the layout and how things work. So they're a fantastic resource. And participating in this Stone Garden program is to me, it feels like our way of kind of repaying that. So it's a great thing for us to participate in, and not having resources in the town will give us resources that we can apply to projects like Stone Garden.
Again, I'm going back years with a few stories. I think 7 Days had a big story on it some years ago, but there seemed to be some controversy about it. Was a controversy that sheriff's departments were, I don't know, getting too much money out of this?
I don't remember.
You don't remember that?
No.
Anyway, it's kind of a vague memory, but I know 7 Days had a long story. I just don't remember the details too much.
Yeah, I kind of remember something too. I don't remember the specifics either, though. But I know it's been a great program. I know that it's been very well funded from a federal level. Yeah. And there's opportunities that we've had to pass on, unfortunately, because we don't have the staffing to support that. But, it's very important for our region, being a border state and being a border county. It's an important partnership for us to have. So, again, that's kind of a win as I see it by not having resources dedicated to the town. After July 1, 24, we'll be able to really take a much bigger chunk of that need off the plates of the Border Patrol. So,
are there other towns that have contacted you who would like to contract with you now, or are you meeting with some folk? I mean, have you got enough staff now? Could you pick up more towns now?
We couldn't pick them up now.
You could not. You don't have the staff.
We don't have the staffing today to do that. But
how many? Tell us about staffing of your office. How many? What's your staffing with Franklin County Sheriff's Department?
So we have about 30 sworn personnel.
Really?
Right now, so and that fluctuates. But I will tell you, Richard, we had a record number of applicants for a 1 month period in February.
Really?
So which was great. We actually have 3 people in the pipeline right now, and by pipeline I mean background process, polygraphs, those kinds of things. 2 of whom had already gone through the level 3 school. So, we're very optimistic about bringing on some new talent, and that, again, will allow us to start entertaining these requests from other towns.
Are you doing okay, or are you pressed just to deal with the 410s you have now?
We are.
Is that right?
Staffing's a challenge, no doubt.
It sounds like you have plenty of company with that.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody's feeling
In fact, I
those
guess
same
the
pains.
Orange County Sheriff's Department was much in the news with, which I guess Randolph's the county seat in Orange County, but I guess they were just saying, hey, we can't even deal with whatever contracts they have. I mean, just staffing would just really fell apart, it sounded like.
Again, it's a challenge that we are all facing. You know,
okay.
it's finding folks. I was talking to a former Winooski police officer the other day, and somebody who had came on when I came on in the late '90s, and we were kind of reminiscing about us, you know, going through the applicant process. And I remember when I was going through with Vermont State Police, there were 295 people vying for 6 positions.
Wow.
Now you can't even find 6 people. You know, so
Is
to
that-
just
is
ask
that right?
candidates.
That's an amazing stat.
You know-
Sounds like the same thing with teachers. Sounds like Orleans County in particular is just really hurting for teaching staff when in the old days there were, dozens of applicants for one position.
Yep. And you know, of the candidates that we get, I mean, we probably have, and I think that our percentages are consistent with what all other law enforcement sees. We might see 20% success rate out of that.
Yeah, really, just
Yeah.
20%.
Yep. It's tough. It's really tough to find good, you know, candidates. But it was something we aggressively are chasing. We've significantly increased our part-time compensation to try to attract that level of support, or a new layer of part-time support, because agencies like ours are very dependent on that. So we've done things like that. We're continually looking at increasing benefits and pay and things like that to make our slots more attractive and you know, again, just being more competitive with what that looks like. So we're doing everything we can do to try to bring folks in, and that's a primary focus for this administration, is to identify and attract new talent.
Interesting, but you're not in position right now to get coverage in any other towns.
We're not, unfortunately.
Interesting.
No, but it's part of our plan, you know, and one of the things that we're looking at very seriously right now is coming up with a more regional policing model. And one of the things that we're finding is that a lot of these smaller towns, and I'll use Bakersfield as just an example.
Yeah.
Maybe they can't afford or don't need 5 days a week or 7 days a week. Maybe they only want a little bit, or maybe they're looking at more targeted enforcement, maybe to deal with some specific issues like speeding or motor vehicle related complaints. So this would allow us to entertain those needs, as well as utilizing resources on a share basis on multiple towns. So one of the examples I've used historically too is that if we have a contract in Enosburg and Richford, why wouldn't we pick up Berkshire? Why wouldn't we look at Montgomery as well? And then rather than having one officer dedicated to each one of those towns, maybe it's 4 officers dedicated to all 4, and then they can rove around.
That would seem to make a lot of sense.
And then that's a shared cost. And you know, so a town like Richford or Enosburg isn't on the hook for paying for 40 hours a week. Maybe they're getting a very similar level of coverage and response, but only having to pay for maybe the equivalency of 30 hours a week.
Right. I think
So we're
Franklin
looking
and
at
Highgate, I believe, have gotten together in the past. Not now, but I think as
Well, we've done Sheldon and Highgate in the past.
Sheldon
That's been
and
a
Highgate
shared,
anyway.
historically,
Okay.
and this is going back a few years.
Okay.
We handled that Fairfax in Georgia the same way, where they shared some time so that we would kind of float in between those 2 towns. So those are things that we're looking at as well, and I think that that's a real big win for the community, as is for us. It alleviates the burden of finding so many people, but it also alleviates the burden on these towns of having to support, you know, services that maybe they can't afford or they might not necessarily need.
Right.
So it's more of an a la carte process for them, and I think that would be a good win.
Right. The Georgia situation certainly got a lot of attention when Sheriff Luncheon was elected, took over, I guess, inherited a contract from his predecessor, Bob Norris. And again, you were obviously part of this, but I guess it was you were losing money. I mean, to keep that same contract, and I guess the sheriff and you might well have been involved yourself. I'm sure you were, but tried to get some more money out of Georgia and
not really, Richard.
Not really.
What had happened was that the contract that was put in place was a 5-year contract.
Okay.
And that
was that unusual for a contract to go beyond the tenure of a sheriff?
No, it's not.
Not unusual.
No, it's not. No.
Okay.
So this particular contract did extend beyond the transition.
Yeah.
And so as we were looking at the costs of just the regular operating costs had significantly gone up from when that contract was originally negotiated several years prior to, when I started working there.
Yeah.
And so when we came to the conclusion that it would be the subsequent year, the following year, the last year of that contract would have been a loss for us, we approached the board and brought that to their attention.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of fizzled out. There was some changeover in the board, in the board members. And
the board wouldn't go beyond. They would not throw in any more money, correct?
Correct, yeah. So one of the options that we had was, can we renegotiate the money?
Yeah.
It just wasn't palatable for them at that time. And it fizzled out. And, we certainly don't need to get in the weeds about how that transpired. But, we were very committed to Georgia. It's always been a great town for us to participate in. It was troublesome for us to lose it the way that it happened. And I think there was an opportunity to come to the table, and that's something that we advocated for. And in every contract, we have this arbitration clause.
Yeah.
And, we were willing to go to the table and have those conversations.
Yeah,
but that wasn't reciprocated.
Yeah, no, I know. I felt I was disappointed that it wasn't resolved. And, of course, Georgia, ended up picking up some coverage, still does, from Milton PD.
Right. Yep.
And I interviewed most of the Georgia Select Board. Interesting. Georgia had a real turnover on the Select Board.
Yeah, they did.
Kind of an interesting town, but
but that's an opportunity for us, Richard, is to get into Georgia again, or expand into other areas, like I said before, that we haven't historically been in. So
the key being to just add to your staff, though.
Correct.
Which sounds like just a difficult issue, but something you're trying to do.
But again, if we have a number of people that are supporting the town contract, so the timing could be very, very good.
Yeah.
So by the time that we align the resources and the finances for the support in these other areas, would be transitioning out of town and just be a very, very smooth swap over from the folks that support the town to supporting these other communities.
Right. Swanton, of course, has its own police department. Sounds like they've done pretty well staffing-wise. Sounds like a pretty stable department with a pretty new chief. But I'm struck by, that's about 10 towns or so in Franklin County that just have state police coverage.
Yeah.
And that's and going back in time, I guess I was thinking that more towns had contracts with the sheriff's department. Is that more towns than usual that just have state police coverage, or not particularly, John?
I don't really know. Like what those arrangements were before I was around. But there have been contracts here and there with different towns that have.
Of course, Highgate has, for the record, St. Albans City.
Right. So Highgate's a good example. We did have a contractual arrangement with Highgate for a number, and I say we, the sheriff's office, again, predating me, had an arrangement with Highgate for a number of years, and that fizzled out, and St. Albans City PD was able to pick that up. So, and then, but Highgate could be another opportunity for us as well to get back into and partner with, like a Sheldon. In an area that we just haven't had the resources to support.
Well, that kind of sounds like a real logical way to go if you can pull that off.
Yeah, and they're great areas to patrol. From a police officer satisfaction standpoint, those are great areas. They're big. There's lots of variation. You can be aggressive with motor vehicle enforcement. It's populous enough where there are complaints that would require investigations and thefts, and drug activity is still a big issue in our communities. So. And those areas up east are plagued with a drug problem. Really, like every place is. So there's a lot of variation from a police officer standpoint to make it a kind of those fun places to work.
Just from your vantage point as being one of the key law enforcement people in Franklin County, again, I'm just struck again by how many towns just have state police coverage. And no offense to the state police, but it sounds like they're hurting like everybody else for staffing. It just sounds like a pretty concerning situation to me, just with, with kind of just not a ton of law enforcement, or am I overstating?
No, you're spot on, Richard. Yeah. There is a tremendous gap in law enforcement coverage everywhere in the country. Yeah. And we've seen the way, and certainly I'm a good example of that, about how police officers are so quickly vilified in the media. Yeah. And that's been one of the things, like with everything going on with me, that has been so tragic, is that this issue is much bigger than just me. Yeah. When I, in my opinion, when I think police officers witness what has taken place with me, it becomes very problematic for them. Whether or not you agree with what happened on August 7th or not, I think that, and I've heard from a number of other police officers that have this on their mind of them not wanting to use force because are they going to be next? Right, is the target going to be on their back next?
And of course, that issue's been playing out nationally with some of
the
terrible incidents out there. But no, it sounds like that issue's out there too.
But the issue with me brings it home, unfortunately, and it's easy to detach from a Minnesota issue because you can say, well, that's not me, that's not my area, that's not my, But when it happens locally, it really brings it home and it makes it real. And so that's been my fear through this entire thing. My ultimate fear is that this just is going to be a deterrent to, people that want to stay in this profession or that want to come to this profession. Because if this can happen to me, why couldn't it happen to them? Why couldn't they be vilified? Why couldn't they be exploited the same way that I was? And I think that that's something that's at least on a few of the officers that I've talked to on their minds. And one of the things that I'm doing to combat that, I do have some power in this process is I'm completely rewriting our internal investigations process. It was...
I know you were very unhappy with how that played out with yourself, obviously.
Yep, and again, as I stated before, there's lots of information to share about that, and that will come out in due time. We're still looking into that as well, but at least one of the things that I can do in the position that I'm in now is to restructure that. And one of the things that I built into that was an employees' rights section. That in this process, employees have rights. Didn't exist before.
Really?
And so that's something that I've built in. And I've collaborated with some of the other sheriffs to see what they have for policies. To try to, I'm not reinventing the wheel, but that's one of the things that I've taken very seriously is to look at our policies and procedures. And that's going to be a major focus of mine is to really dive into those and make sure that we do have best practices in all levels of our business. As we talked about the finances before, but in everything that we do, whether it's use of force, whether it's how we operate vehicles, whether it's how we conduct internal investigations, that's something that's very, very important to me. And I can only speak for my office, and this is something that I've said to my folks, and I'll say again to you, is that no matter what happens, if you're a deputy of mine, you will not be treated the way that I got treated. And that's the power that I have, right? That's something that I can control, and that's been empowering, that I can change that. And it's not just me. I work very closely with my chief deputy and other members of the organization to make sure that, I don't do anything in a vacuum. So, but that's one of the things that I have is to really establish what the process is going to look like when somebody is accused of something, whatever it is, whether it's a crime or whether it's just a complaint that I saw an officer speeding down the road and somebody didn't like that. So whatever those are going to have a very well documented, very, very well defined process. And in that process is a number of layers of protection for employees. For example, employee matters are confidential. They're not public. They're not going to be in a position where they can be made public. They're not going to be leaked to the press. Videos aren't going to be released. There's a process for that, and we will conduct very thorough, very earnest, very transparent investigations if they come up. Certainly we're hopeful we never have to do those kinds of investigations, but should we do that, then there will be some very strict guidance around how those happens because, and this happened with me, I can speak to it specifically. When something like this happens and you're not afforded due process and you're not even treated with dignity and respect, it's incredibly damaging. Emotionally, mentally, publicly, and that's something that I can control and I will control with my organization is to make sure that that doesn't happen. So if things come up, we will treat people with dignity and respect, and it's the same dignity and respect we treat everybody with whom we interact with. So those things I can do. So that's been the great thing about being in this position is that I can make those changes and will make those changes. And that's just some of them. The internal investigations process is one of them. There's a lot that need to be reviewed. The policies that we have are very, very old. Most of them are outdated. Most of them haven't been reviewed yearly as they really should be, at least yearly. So that's a focus for mine going forward. And has been, and we've already rewritten a couple of policies, enacted a couple of policies. One of the examples too is, in our benefits policy, there never was a provision to pay out a vacation. So it was kind of a use it or lose it, which I didn't think was fair. It wasn't right. It's particularly with
especially if you need people and stuff.
Well, that too. But if sometimes the needs of the business don't afford you to be able to take vacation,
Sure.
so it doesn't feel right that employees would earn this and then lose it. So I wrote in a provision to allow that as a possibility, a payout, a yearly payout. So if somebody can't use vacation, then they could get compensated for that vacation.
Yeah,
we want people to
good.
use vacation. We recognize that that's an important mental health aspect of our jobs, and taking time off with families is very, very important. But in cases where that is not possible, then we have a provision. So not that that's a like a monumental change, but it's an important change.
Sounds like that makes sense to me.
Yep. So things like that we're looking at.
Yeah. Again, with all the controversy that continues to kind of surround you, rightly or wrongly, depending on one's point of view, how much does that hurt the department, John?
Well, initially, I think it was very damaging.
Yeah.
And I did speak with a number of deputies even before I was elected. As I've communicated before, we had a meeting before. Just after I got elected, before I took office. So after I had won, that was kind of one of the major themes was that they got caught up on this, and that's been horrifically unfair. And I've made this clear before, and I'll make it clear again today that what happened on the 7th is nobody's responsibility but my own. It has nothing to do with any of the other deputies that are there, and that's been an unfortunate and a very regrettable circumstance. Is that they've gotten caught up in this. It's been their department's name that is dragged through. It's not just John Grismore. It's Captain Grismore at the time, or Franklin County, right? So that there's been an association between the two, which has been, I think it's inevitable, that's the correlation that's made, but it's been unfair, it's been unwarranted, and it's something that I certainly wish didn't happen, and I never promoted it. It was the media that were the ones that brought all that together.
Do you feel like you can, make progress on that front, or just
absolutely? And I think we've made tremendous strides forward. And
I mean, some of you have plenty of critics out there. Have you got some of them to change their minds about this? Have you?
I don't know anybody that specifically, been identified as a critic. That I've had the opportunity to change their mind. But I will tell you this, Richard, I've not received anything negative from any of the people that I've interacted with. Quite to the contrary. I've had a number of people come in and be like, "Oh, you're the new sheriff, and I've voted for you. I'm glad you're here. I stand behind you." I've received that message time and time again. I went out with some friends Friday night for St. Patrick's Day, and I was a designated driver. But I had a number of people come up to me when I was out publicly and say that they voted for me and they stood behind me. I go to the post office and folks and they're under no obligation to say anything. They could just look away or walk away. But a number of people would just routinely come up to me and say that they supported me, that they agree with what took place, that they voted for me, and things like that. So that's been great.
There was even some kind of loose talk, perhaps, in the legislature, or some impeachment talk and stuff. That seemed to certainly go nowhere. But and I'm not sure where the bill, but legislature sounds like really was concerned about not just your situation, but sheriff's departments, and I think maybe even other offices, just lack of accountability, wanting more accountability. You've certainly taken note of what the legislature's been talking about. Does that make sense for the legislature to do something about that, or do you think that's an issue that is a problem that doesn't exist? Well, it sounds like accountability was their concern about sheriff's departments and maybe other departments in counties, I guess county government.
Right. Yeah. So, and I haven't been incredibly tied to it. We've got a couple of, the president and the vice president of the Vermont Sheriff's Association have been very, very active. And, really, Richard, the thing that I will say is that I'm united with them in their position on that. And they've done a fantastic job and spent countless hours testifying and supporting a version that is more encompassing than what is currently written. So, again, I don't know all of the intricacies of all of that. I've really had a lot of faith and confidence in the two representatives, the president and the vice president, and other members too. It's not just them, but those two have had the big voices for all of us. So, I think all of the sheriffs, at least the ones that I've had conversations with, we're all united in the front that we're certainly open to dialogue about how to increase accountability. And I don't think that there's any sheriff that doesn't think that that's a benefit. But the context in which that's being brought forward, I think needs some tweaking, needs some help. So from what I've understood is that, the United Front of the Sheriff's Association is willing to continue those conversations and participate in an amicable resolution. The information that I have is just how it's written right now is not something that's going to work for the Sheriff's Association.
Right. It's just getting some attention. I haven't heard much for the last week or two, and again, we're taping this show on Wednesday, March 22nd. Northwest State Correctional Facility, interesting. I've been around here for a bunch of decades, but of course that started as a juvenile offenders facility and turned into the most hardcore prison in the state. But again, with Woodside having closed and the state seemingly running into problems with a juvenile offenders facility, if I'm using the right term, in Newberry, that's running into strong opposition. So I guess the state has been talking about maybe adding a component to the prison in St. Albans Town. Your thoughts? I'm not sure where that stands, but it sounded like a pretty solid proposal. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't know a lot of the details about that. I am in agreement that there needs to be a facility.
Yeah.
When Woodside closed, and I'm not a proponent for how Woodside was structured or managed, and I don't have the details on. I know there were some complaints and some allegations made against how personnel were treated. I don't have those specifics, so I can't comment on that. But I do agree that there needs to be some sort of facility that is dedicated to youthful offenders and brings to bear a number of resources that are very unique to youthful offenders. Sometimes that means an incarceration type setting. And when I say youthful, I mean you're also considering that is under 18. So a lot of those folks could be in that 17-year-old age range where. We're not, when we say kids or youth, we're not saying like 6 and 7 year olds, so it's the latter years of the juvenile, latter years of the juvenile cycle. So I think that there does need to be something. I don't know exactly. I certainly don't have the expertise to comment on what that should be, but, I certainly would be happy to participate in any conversations around that. And I know that there was some opposition about the geographic location of that facility.
Too close to the road, I guess, is.
And I think there was some concerns about whether that would be a fenced-in facility or not. Is it going to be more of an incarceration facility? I don't have a lot of those details, but I can tell you this: I do agree that there does need to be some sort of facility that is dedicated to the needs of youthful offenders and looking at rehabilitation. How do you stop them from committing a life of crime and what are the resources that need to be incorporated to ensure that? So, I'll watch it, specifically as it's in the town that I'm responsible for today and potentially in the county that I'm responsible for. So we'll continue to watch it closely. And
Again, given your coverage in St. Albans Town, do you get any contact with the folks at the prison at Northwest State? Do you have any regular contact with those folks or not?
Well, we do in the sense that one of the responsibilities that the sheriff has is transporting folks from the correctional facility to court and back. So we do there. But as far as the facility as a whole, no, they run a great, they have a tight ship there, and they run a great facility from what I've understood, and we've never had issues where we've had to respond to crises there. It does fall under the state police. So they're the ones that are responsible for investigating things that happen at the facility.
Okay.
So if there's an injury or an assault or things, that's something that the state police have. So that's nothing that we would respond to anyway. But no, there's never been any issues since I've been around that.
I go back long enough where security issues were a big issue long ago. But it sounds like, as you said, in recent. Last decade or two, it's been a pretty tight ship there.
Right. Yep. And they've had the same challenges, from what I understand, that everybody has. Staffing is always a problem. Always a problem. Right. But I've brought a number of folks there over the years, and I've always found their staff professional and capable, and I've never had any personal concerns about that. But that's just my experience.
How are you doing with cruisers and stuff? Just with your cruisers, department headquarters. You in good shape with that?
We are. Have you got? Yep, we are. We have a brand new car just got delivered the other day. So that's waiting for upfit, lights and sirens and things. We've got another one that's on the way, ready to be delivered. So that's going well. We're phasing out some of the older The white cars, we've changed our graphics to be black cars with green lettering.
Yeah.
So that, the white ones, as we call them in the office, are phasing out. So we'll keep a few for traffic-related things, but we're removing them from the patrol segment of our fleet. So it's still going well. The facility is still great. We're looking to make improvements. One of the things that is on my short list to do is to develop a more holding cell area. I mean, everybody saw the video of how that bench exists with. It's not adequate.
And again, so you don't have a actual holding.
We don't have a cell. No, we need to have cells, and they're more humane. Cells are more humane. They do afford folks in your custody some more freedoms. Going to the bathroom is a big example. When somebody's in custody, it's a challenge for them to go to the bathroom, especially when you have somebody that's combative, that, you don't want to take them out of their restraints if they've already tried to assault you. So how do you facilitate their bathroom needs? And again, as an example. So, and being handcuffed the whole time or shackled is maybe not the best way to restrain somebody for a period of time while you're going through the processing. So we already started looking at how to facilitate a better holding cell area within the structure that we have, and we've been working very closely with the people that own the building to see about how we can use that space a little bit better, and have gotten great support with that. So the facilities, it's fine for us, and if and when we do lose the town, that's going to create some geographical challenges for us, but it just maybe is the opportunity for us to build another location that's maybe more centric to, the county as a whole, and not kind of on the St. Albans side. So, but those are longer term prospects. But the shorter term thing for us is to really come up with a much better holding cell. That again, that's more humane. That's a better way of just isolating folks while they're in custody and while you're going through that processing cycle.
Boy, in my early days of reporting, a huge story for me, for the county, was when then Sheriff Roland Keenan closed the Franklin County Jail on Lincoln Avenue, which I've been through a few times. That's quite the play. I guess it's just someone bought it, used it as your house. I guess.
Yeah, well, it was.
That was a big issue.
Yeah, under Norris, it was still used for federal detainees.
Even under
so that
recently.
was still in existence. Back when I was
federal detainees.
In the 2000s. So
interesting.
So it was still in use for that. But
Federal is it Northwest State Correctional Facility? Will they hold on to federal detainees at this point, or
no? It's not handled by that's a state function. So the federal thing is something that ICE or Border Patrol would manage and continue to manage. So it was just a partnership, as I understand it, that then Sheriff Norris had with trying to create an intermediary between longer term holding or deportation for folks. So it's just a way of kind of keeping them in a location where they could easily access the adjudication process.
Right.
Yep.
With the four towns you have, and again going back to your tenure under Roger Langevin, crime is here. Do type of crimes change? I mean, you touched on some of this. Obviously, drug issues have been big for years. I'm always hearing complaints about speeding. Correct. But just in your last several years with law enforcement, any particular changes in the types of crime you're dealing with?
No, we do still get a number of complaints for speeding, and the speeding isn't, the traditional 12 or 15 miles an hour over. The most of the big issues that we have now are excessive speeds.
Yeah. Excessive being at least like 20 miles
30,
over the
30, at least
30,
at least 60 miles an hour and 30 miles an hour over the speed limit. Just the other day, we had a complaint from a citizen in the town about a particular stretch of road that this person felt was being exploited and people were driving too fast. So we went down and did some enforcement, and one of the tickets we wrote was for a 67 and a 30. That's an excessive speed, So we see a lot of those continually, the higher speed issues, but speeding is always a challenge. And really, COVID really kind of exploited that, with law enforcement not wanting to interact with people. Obviously, we at that point in time, we limited our interactions, we limited our motor vehicle enforcement work. Less cars on the road, people, treated it as like the Autobahn. So, there was much higher speeders, lower volumes of cars at that time, but higher speeders. So that's something we've talked about in the past. But drugs still the big issue. Drugs are a very, very big problem in our area. And again, in every area. But we work very closely with the Drug Task Force. We've got a number of initiatives that are in works right now to hopefully put a dent in the drug trade that's happening in our communities. So, but it's still a big issue. Fentanyl is a very, very dangerous product that's out there. We're seeing the reemergence of crack is coming back. Heroin's still an issue, but and those really lead to a lot of other crimes, right? So a lot of the thefts that we see you can trace back to some sort of drug interaction. The robberies, the things like that. A lot, and other communities have seen it. A lot of gun violence is related to the drug trade. So, thankfully, our community has not seen a number of those, gun-related acts of violence. But we do see a number of drug-related crimes that continue to plague our community.
The legalization of marijuana in Vermont, were you unhappy with that? Was that something you would have?
Personally, I was not unhappy.
Really?
I wish that there would have been better regulations. Processing impaired drivers that are under the influence of drugs and whole. But
it sounds like that was one of the one of the big concerns.
Correct. Yeah. It's a huge challenge. There's no real easy way for us to do a roadside test like there is with alcohol.
Right.
So that continues to be a challenge for us. But and I said this before, I've never interacted with somebody that's been high on marijuana that's been a problem. It's if they've been a problem, it's been because of the combination of alcohol or other drugs. So I personally haven't had a challenge with the legalization, or should I say the decriminalization of marijuana. There just needed to be better controls around it, from a law enforcement perspective, so that we can respond to impaired driving, as an example, much more effectively than we can today. But the big issues are fentanyl, the big issues are heroin, the big issues are crack. Those continue to be really dangerous and damaging drugs.
Down to about a minute and a half. Do you get out of the office at all, John?
I do. I do. One of the things that's very important to me is to be a very engaged leader. And as an example, when we got that complaint about speeders, the chief deputy and I went down ourselves to respond to that. So, and I'll still go to calls when I'm needed. I went to another call last night. Just to provide support, or another layer of support when necessary. And, certainly our folks are capable. They don't need me at these calls per se. But
I got to think, you're not unhappy to get out of the office once in a while.
No, I still love the job. I still love that. And again, I've said this before, that this is the only profession where you have an opportunity every single day to make a positive impact on somebody's life.
And I'm sure every single day is different, too.
I take those opportunities when I can. Yeah.
Anyway, so a couple months on the job, almost 2 months on the job, but again, dealing with a whole lot of controversy. But you feel like you're hanging in there, okay? And
we are. I think we're really, every day we get better and better. We're into a groove now with the operations. As I said before, I've got a fantastic team. I'm very pleased with the folks that are there now. And, things every day get better and better and better. People are sorting out. I had the benefit of running operations there for 3.5 years, so the transition was very easy for me. I know how things run. So, and again, I've got a great team, so I'm very happy about that.
Okay. On that note, we'll leave it there. Hey, many thanks to Franklin County Sheriff John Grismore. John, thanks for the time. Good luck. Sounds like you have a lot of work out there, and good luck with staffing. Hopefully, staffing situation will get a little better at some point. But thanks for the time. Thanks to our producer, Paul Snyder. I'm Richard Cowperthwait. Thanks for watching us on Northwest Access TV. See you next time.